Hello, my observant friends. Welcome back to Slow English. Look around you. Every person you meet, every face you see on the street, every voice you hear in a movie is a hidden treasure chest of language. But most people walk through life with their eyes closed and their ears covered. They look, but they do not see. They hear, but they do not listen. What if I told you that the most powerful textbook in the world is...
Today, we are going to unlock a secret skill that top polyglots and communication experts use to master foreign languages. You will learn how to turn your everyday observations into an active English laboratory. More importantly, you will learn the exact formulas to speak about yourself, your history, your passions, your dreams, with complete, effortless confidence. By the end of this lesson, you will never feel lost for words again when someone asks, "Tell me about yourself." Take a breath.
Welcome to the debate. Think about the last time you were completely paralyzed trying to speak a new language, or, even just trying to sound articulate in a really high-stakes meeting.
Oh yeah, the absolute worst feeling.
Right? You likely had all the right vocabulary memorized, you knew the grammar rules, but the moment you actually opened your mouth, everything just, vanished.
Well, yeah, because in that moment, human communication stops being a neat little set of flashcards, right? It becomes this live performance. It's just an incredibly stressful cognitive load.
Exactly. And figuring out how to survive that live performance is, well, it's what we're exploring today through the lens of The Social Scientist's Guide to Fluent Communication.
Such a great text.
It really is. And the material presents this fascinating tension about how we actually achieve true fluency. On my side of the table, I'll be arguing that, based on the text, mastery comes fundamentally from intuitive, emotional observation, basically bypassing our analytical brains entirely to just connect with the person right in front of us.
Right, but if you look at the actual methodology the text provides, I think there's a really compelling counter-narrative. I'll be arguing that true fluency, that ability to sound natural and relaxed, is actually built on a very rigid foundation of highly predictable linguistic formulas and memorized frameworks.
Okay, well, to understand the intuitive side of this, we really have to look at the text's assertion about what language actually is. It claims that language is only 30% vocabulary and grammar.
Which is a huge claim.
Massive. Because it implies the remaining 70% is entirely nonverbal. It's, body language, tone, rhythm, and emotion, like using silence to create drama or a rising tone for open questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the text introduces this thing called the empathy mirror technique to capture this. The whole idea is that when you actively mirror a native speaker's relaxed pacing, your brain's mirror neurons fire.
Right, the biological component.
Exactly. You aren't just logically copying them. Your nervous system is biologically syncing to theirs. And that physiological shift physically relaxes your vocal cords, it turns off your amygdala's panic response, and it just allows you to bypass that stressful, analytical part of the brain. You just sense what feels right.
Okay, but relying on physiological syncing assumes you actually have the emotional bandwidth to do that in real time. I mean, it is undeniably wise to abandon dry grammar books. I'm with you there.
Glad we agree on that.
Right. But if we look closely at the text's most actionable advice, it doesn't leave communication up to like a biological vibe check.
A vibe check. Come on.
I mean, take small talk, right? The text doesn't describe small talk as this magical emotional exchange. It explicitly defines it as a highly predictable game that relies on a small set of linguistic formulas. True fluency isn't achieved just by, feeling someone's energy in a room.
Well,
It requires executing very specific structural blueprints so your brain isn't scrambling for organization while you are actually trying to speak.
I hear you, but the intuition has to lead the structure, not the other way around. Think about the text analogy of our childhood superpower.
Oh, right, the toddler analogy.
Yeah. When you learned your native language, your parents didn't sit you down at 2 years old and hand you a formula for past participles.
Thankfully, no.
Right. You just looked at their faces. You simply mirrored how they expressed anger or joy or curiosity. You mapped the emotional and physical expressions first, and the structural rules were just, the exhaust left behind by that intuitive biological observation. Intuitive observation must lead the process.
It's a wonderful analogy, it really is. But let's be honest about adult learners here. A 2-year-old isn't sweating through a networking event, terrified of sounding incompetent.
Okay, fair point, but
When an adult is in a freeze response, they cannot simply intuit their way out of it. And that is exactly why the text introduces the hook and bridge technique for small talk anxiety. It acknowledges that when an average speaker is asked, "How was your weekend?" their raw intuition often leads to this dead-end panic answer.
like, it was good
Exactly. It was good. Conversation over.
because the anxiety just takes over.
Precisely. But the successful conversationalist, acting as a social scientist, like the book says, uses a strict conscious formula. You answer briefly, you add one interesting detail, like going hiking in perfect weather, and then you throw the ball back with an open-ended question.
Right, the bridge.
Yes, it works because it gives the anxious brain a precise, predictable track to run on. That is analytical gameplay. That's not intuitive mirroring.
But running on a formulaic track only gets you so far, especially when the stakes get higher, say, speaking about yourself in a major job interview.
Well, structures hold up there, too.
But if you're just executing formulas, you risk sounding like a robot. Sophistication in those high-stakes moments comes from emotional presence and authenticity, not some complex architecture.
Okay, how so?
Well, the text uses this fantastic MasterChef analogy. A brilliant chef doesn't need expensive, gold-plated ingredients to impress, right?
Mm-hmm.
They take simple things, potatoes, onions, salt, olive oil, and they handle them with profound care.
Sure, the basics.
Exactly. In language, you don't need a structurally complex gold-plated sentence like, "I am profoundly captivated by intricate methodologies." That's awful.
Yeah.
You just say, "I love working with computers because it feels like solving a beautiful puzzle."
It is a great line.
It lands because it focuses on verbs and emotional truth, rather than a dry timeline of dates and nouns. The warmth is what makes it sophisticated. You can't formulate your way into warmth.
I have to push back there. The only reason you can deliver that beautiful puzzle line with genuine warmth is because you aren't silently panicking about what you're going to say next.
Because you're present in the moment.
No, because the text actively provides the structural blueprint to manufacture that natural delivery. It's the past, present, future framework. To speak flawlessly, the text instructs learners to logically organize their narrative.
Right, the timeline structure.
Yeah, present, which is your current state in an interesting context, past, how you got there, and future, your vision and ambition. When you know your narrative logically flows that way, your brain is relieved of its organizational stress.
But the emotion,
The emotion only lands effectively because this strict pre-built structure is doing the heavy lifting in the background. Without that logical architecture to hold the ideas in place, the emotion just turns into disorganized rambling.
okay, but how do those specific, authentic words even get into your brain to be organized in the first place? Translating passive knowledge into active skill is the whole game.
Agreed.
And that acquisition process is deeply personal and intuitive. Look at the text's focus on building muscle memory. It tells us that when a learner hears a great phrase like, I stumbled into this career by pure accident, they shouldn't just logically write it down in a notebook.
Right, notebooks are passive.
Exactly. The instruction is to speak it out loud to an empty room and attach it to their own life. So maybe they stumbled into learning English via a late-night YouTube video, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Physical articulation bridges the gap between passive understanding and active recall. By vocalizing the words and tying them to your own identity, you're physically carving new neural pathways. It's a deeply personal, emotional curation of language.
You are absolutely right that personalizing the vocabulary is how we retain it. But what you just described is the ultimate analytical experiment.
How is speaking to an empty room analytical?
Because it is the core of the social scientist method. You hear a phrase like stumbled into, you step back to analyze its utility, you isolate it, and then systematically graft it onto your own narrative.
But it's an emotional connection to your life.
It is highly conscious curation, though. You are deliberately building a toolkit. It proves that mastery is a deliberate, continuous cycle of observation and structural application. It's not just a spontaneous release of emotion.
So I guess we are looking at two deeply intertwined mechanisms here. Because from my perspective, the structures and frameworks you're talking about, they're essentially empty vessels.
Empty.
Yeah, I mean, a perfectly executed past, present, future timeline won't save you if you're missing the foundational 70% of communication. You know, the nonverbal cues, the pacing, the emotional resonance, and the intuitive power of the empathy mirror.
Right, and from the other perspective, I'd say that feeling of effortless fluency is entirely enabled by calculation.
Calculation sounds so cold.
But it's effective. The safety net of predictable linguistic formulas, like the hook and bridge or the narrative frameworks, is exactly what prevents adult anxiety from hijacking the brain. That structure is what allows that authentic emotional connection to occur at all.
Well, I think where both of our perspectives clearly align is on the text's central mandate. To actually master communication, you have to shed the passive student mindset entirely.
Exactly. You can't just memorize rules. You have to step out of the textbook and become an active social scientist. Treat the real world as a living laboratory and actively analyze how human beings actually connect and engage with one another.
Which means building a conversation is an incredibly dynamic, living process. And, I think it leaves us with a pretty compelling, lingering question for the next time you find yourself stepping into a high-stakes interaction.
What's that?
Will you lean on the invisible architecture of your linguistic formulas, or will you trust yourself enough to just feel the music of the room? There's definitely a lot more to explore here, but we'll leave it up to you to decide which methodology resonates most with your own journey.